Hey guys, Michael J. Crawford here, and this is going to be a little bit of a follow-up video to my video that I posted yesterday, as of this recording, in which I commented on some comments by Representative Greene that I personally found quite offensive. And a lot of people got upset about that video, and I want to address some of the grievances put forth by some of you, and I want to say this right up front. I encourage a discussion on this. I truly do. I want to hear from you. If you're one of the people that put forth one of the arguments that I'm about to critique, I would ask you to respond to this video. But I would ask you to listen to the entirety of this video before you respond, and to actually respond to what I'm talking about, not pulling something out from somewhere else. Because we need to keep the conversation focused. Otherwise, we go down 1,000 rabbit holes, and it doesn't benefit anybody. So if we can keep the conversation focused, I think it can be fruitful and interesting. If we don't, then it's just going to turn into a shouting match. So there were three basic types of comments that I want to respond to. First of all, let me tell you what I'm not going to respond to, and that is the various comments that generally agreed with me, because who wants to watch me congratulating myself for having someone agree with me? That'd be boring. But I do want to respond to three kinds of comments. The first is those of you that were encouraging and well-wishing and just saying that you were happy to see that I seem to have some energy, that I was able to communicate effectively, that I seem to be recovering from the surgery, etc. So to all of you, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I will tell you, I still got a long way to go as far as my health is concerned, but your well wishes are greatly appreciated, and, take it one day at a time, man. That's all I can do. So now, as far as the actual comments about the subject matter of the video itself, there are two basic dissenting views that I got. There are a lot of different commenters, but really boils down into two main categories. The first is honestly the only argument that tries at least to justify the statement made by Representative Greene. And that is to suggest that conservatives are in fact systematically being treated as second-class citizens, and therefore comparing the plight of the modern conservative to the plight of Jews from the 1930s and 40s is a fair comparison, because while sure, we don't see conservatives being lined up and sent into gas chambers or anything, they are being demonized, and they are being, basically attempted at least to be converted into second-class citizens. So let me address that head on. That's an interesting enough argument on its own, except for a couple of problems. First of all, that's what Gina Carano was talking about in her Twitter post. That has nothing to do with this. The actual comments from Representative Greene were in response to Nancy Pelosi's quote-unquote oppressive mask policies, that everybody had to wear masks while doing business on the House of Representatives floor. Let me repeat that. Everybody had to wear masks while conducting business on the House of Representatives floor. Everybody, not just Republicans. So the problem here is that has nothing to do with what she was actually saying. Now, some have said, and a couple of people said in comments and stuff, that that's what she meant. Well, it's not in her statement anywhere. And so she may have been thinking of something like that in the back of her mind, but I'm not a psychic. And so I can only go by what she actually said. And when she did go before the press to clarify, she didn't say anything of that sort to the press at that point. And I played the clip of her talking to the press. So, granted, I know that the last few seconds were cut off, but what was cut off wasn't really anything that would have said what you guys are thinking of. So if she had said that, oh yeah, it's so unfair that only conservatives are being forced to wear masks, okay, if that's what Nancy Pelosi's policies are, you might have something. But no, she was just upset because she had to wear a mask to work. And she was comparing that to the way the Jews were treated. And that makes no sense whatsoever. It's absolutely absurd, in my opinion. And I would ask you, if you're one of the people that made one of those arguments, to genuinely and honestly apply a little bit of critical thinking to this and consider what she said was that these are the oppressive policies of Nancy Pelosi with the mask requirements. And then you tell me how Nancy Pelosi's mask requirements are oppressive to only one side. Because, at least as far as I'm aware, they apply equally to both parties, as well as independents for that matter. The other line of response, I have to say, it's a little old. It's as old as politics. And it's... and I'm sorry, I know I'm going to offend some of you, but I got to say it, it's a little childish, juvenile, and it's completely meaningless. And that is the deflection argument. There were two basic flavors of it. One is that people like Maxine Waters, Nancy Pelosi, AOC, have said far worse things than what Representative Greene said. That's the first one. Is basically trying to turn, instead of trying to defend what Greene said, to turn it into an attack against what Nancy Pelosi or one of her cronies said. The other is to turn it into an attack against me, to suggest that somehow I lack integrity, or I'm biased, or somehow insidiously trying to deceive people by not attacking Maxine Waters or Nancy Pelosi or AOC or whatever. And so those were the two. And quite frankly, to those, and I'm sorry, I know that one person in particular, I consider you a good friend, that was using this line of argumentation in the comments. And you know what? If you weren't my friend, I would have just said the F word to you and written you off. Because you seriously want to attack my integrity because I didn't attack someone you don't like. But I did attack someone you do. And by attack, I mean criticize their statement, not like physically attack, obviously. And so you're so off-put by me criticizing the politics of one person that you're going to suggest that I'm a bad person because of it. You know what? I'm sorry. That is beneath you. Anybody that has put that in there, that is absolutely beneath you. And I, I'm not going to ask for an apology, but man, that was pushing it. I'm not going to lie. Now, as far as the other one, the blame game, where we say, well, Maxine Waters said something worse, or Nancy Pelosi said something worse, etc. There's a couple of problems with that. Number one, the video wasn't about Maxine Waters or Nancy Pelosi or AOC, so that's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Like Maxine Waters having said, so, for example, I'll tell you something Maxine Waters said that I found very offensive. I think it was right around my birthday, like April 19th, 20th, around there. During a protest, Maxine Waters was encouraging the protesters to get violent. Particularly if the verdict in the case that was out to the jury didn't come back the way they wanted. That was wrong, right? And in fact, that I think could be considered incitement. And I would support the idea of her being brought up on charges for those comments. So I am nobody's fan of Maxine Waters. But the video wasn't about Maxine Waters, and I'm not going to do a video about Maxine Waters just because I did a video about Representative Greene. Because, and I know this should be shocking to all of my conservative friends out there that were making this argument, because you're making an argument for the very thing that you say you're opposed to, and that is a quota system. That it's only fair if you attack both sides. It's not fair if you only attack the conservative. And you need to be fair, so you need representation. We need equal, outcomes. So to all of you that have said that, if you're going to do a video about how much you hate The Last Jedi, well, then you need to do a video attacking someone else who hates The Last Jedi so that you can be fair. If you want to do a video about why you think chocolate ice cream is the best, then you should put out another video attacking someone who thinks chocolate ice cream is the best so you can be fair. Because we got to be fair about everything. So we need to post videos that are on both sides of everything, right? Because that's what we all do, isn't it? Right? Isn't it? Oh, wait, no, nobody does. But you're expecting that here because I attacked someone in your tribe, and so you think it's unfair, and why don't I attack someone from the other tribe? Well, let me explain a couple of things to you. There is an old saying, 2 wrongs don't make a right. Well, that person did something even worse than what your person did. 2 wrongs don't make a right. Well, what that person did was really wrong. 2 wrongs don't make a right. No, you don't get it. That person, what they said was complete. 2 wrongs don't make a right. And in fact, if you want to take that as an actual defense for what she said, then you can literally defend anybody by simply pointing at the leader of the German party in the 1940s. Because since that person was worse than any American politician, then all you got to do is say, well, that person was worse, and end the conversation. 2 wrongs don't make a right. And so I'm sorry. I know that some of you may be offended by this, but that's childish and it's beneath you. So take that for what it is. If you want to make a real argument as to why you want to defend Representative Greene, that's fine. Or if you just want to admit, hey, the reason that I'm okay with what Representative Greene said is because she's a Republican, fine, admit it. Just admit it. But I'm not going to do that. Why? Because I'm not a Republican, nor am I a Democrat. I'm a non-ideologist. I don't really label myself conservative or liberal most of the time. I just look at an issue and I say, well, that's what I think is the right thing to do. And more often than not, I tend to fall on the conservative side of things, but not always. And there are some things that I do think we need to take a serious look at what the liberals want to do. But we can't just, this childish, infantile methodology of thinking about politics has got to end. And I really don't understand why otherwise rational, intelligent people act like babies when it comes to politics. And we saw some of that in the chat or in the comments for the last video. People still insisting that, oh, well, you don't understand. The election was stolen. Due process went through. Every case was thrown out. It's over. And you know what I said back in 2000 when the Supreme Court handed the election to George Bush? Due process happened. The legal system prevailed. It's over. And I'm sorry to those of you that were Trump supporters and were really upset over what happened with the election. But it happened, and it's over. We need to move on, rather than to try and poison the well, which is what we're doing with this new movement of absolutely crazy new Republican nonsense. Because I see it in my neighborhood with one of the people lives right down the street from me. He has a couple of flags in his front yard, right? He has the Trump Make America Great Again flag still flying in his front yard. He's still, trying to stop the steal, whatever. Next to that, he proudly flies the Stars and Bars. Next to that, he flies this flag that is weird. It's half of the United States flag, half the Stars and Bars. Next to that, he has the Don't Tread on Me flag. And then next to that, he has the United States flag. And, I'd like to say he's a nice guy, but honestly, I'm not going to say that. And he that level of ignorance is unfortunately becoming more and more pervasive in the Republican Party. He doesn't understand why there might be a problem sitting there bragging about what a patriot you are while you're flying an enemy battle flag. I'm sure that he would be really, really upset if I started flying the Soviet Union flag in front of my house. But he's flying the Stars and Bars, an enemy flag. And you know what? I understand. I live in the South, and a lot of Southerners are very proud of their history, and I don't care if you have a little Stars and Bars bumper sticker on your car, or you even have a Confederate flag in a display case in your garage or whatever. I don't care. You fly it in front of your house, you're flying an enemy flag on American soil. I have no respect for that. You can call yourself a patriot all day long. Take down that battle flag. Sorry. Not sorry. So we become so crazy and immature about all this that we want to point the finger at someone else and saying, but they're worse, rather than own up to what our person said. We would rather see our political party burn and while holding this delusional denial of thinking that there's anything wrong. We think, oh, Trump's coming back. Trump is going to save the day. Honestly, Trump has probably already destroyed the Republican Party. I hope it's not the case, but I'm afraid that it is. In the end, why did I do a video attacking Representative Greene as opposed to Nancy Pelosi or Maxine Waters or any of these other idiots? Well, that should be pretty obvious by this point, but if you haven't figured it out, it's very simple. Because I care more about what so-called conservatives are saying than liberals. Because since I tend to fall on the conservative side of things, then I want the conservative ideal to be more successful. And it's not going to be if this is going to become the new standard for conservative rhetoric. Because I will tell you, this is where the liberals have outclassed the conservatives time in and out. Time in and out? I don't know if that even makes sense. But anyway, they've been outclassing the conservatives for some time about this. Is what they tend to do very effectively is whatever the conservative says, the liberal tries to spin it into them being somehow racist, sexist, or homophobic, and they usually find an effective means for doing so. And it's very difficult to combat that. It's a very good, powerful, emotional form of rhetoric that generally works, and the liberals are masters of it. So how do you combat that as a conservative? Well, honestly, the only way you can really combat it is the way that the Republicans had been combating it up until the time of Trump, is you try to combat it with reason and logic and sound argumentation. But instead, now we want to get our own emotional rhetoric out there. But the problem is that if you look at the kind of rhetoric we're getting, it simply reinforces what the Democrats are saying. If you look at what Greene said, there are a lot of people that now think that Greene is a straight-up anti-Semite. Now, it doesn't help that she had her whole thing with lasers causing the fires in California in 2018. And I know she didn't say Jewish space laser. That was an exaggeration that was put out there by certain people. But she did suggest that lasers from space that were controlled by a large left-wing group, controlled primarily by a Jewish group, was the culprit. But nevertheless, she, so her saying things like comparing wearing a mask to what happened to the Jews in the 1940s belittles the Holocaust, makes her appear to be an anti-Semite. Things that other Republicans have said in recent months have made people think that they're extremely racist, especially some of the reaction to, for example, some of the Black Lives Matter controversies that have happened. And so Republicans have lost their ability to communicate effectively because they're trying to get emotional and they're shooting themselves in the foot when they do. And I hate to see that. Maybe you're okay with it and you want to defend her and you want to go down fighting, well, I'd prefer not to go down at all. Take care.